Hello beautiful people, it's Steph here if you don't already know, and on this channel I just talk all things careers and all things lifestyle. And in today's video I am going to be answering the question, how do you convert a vacation scheme into a training contract? So let's get straight into it. If you like this type of content, please do make sure that you like, comment and subscribe. Okay, cool. So let's set the scene. Let's give you a little bit of context first. I'm currently an associate at a global law firm in London. I trained at this law firm. I did a winter vacation scheme at this law firm. Now, I was able to convert this winter vacation scheme successfully into a training contract, which is why I am here today. But I also did do another vacation scheme before the winter vac scheme, and I didn't convert that into a training contract. So I'm going to be talking to you about all of the things that I did wrong, all of the things that I did right, and what my top tips and best advice is for you if you are currently in a similar position where you are about to get onto a vacation scheme and you want to know how to convert that into a training contract. So let's go. First thing I will say is that it's really important for you to remember that A, the vacation scheme is holistically assessed. Holistic meaning that there isn't only one thing that matters, and we'll go into the different elements that I think you should care about. But B, it's a 2-week long interview, and I say 2 weeks because I'm assuming that the typical vacation scheme lasts for 2 weeks, but I know there are some firms that do 3-week vac schemes, etc., etc. So just adjust that time frame accordingly. But in essence, it's a 2-week long interview, and you need to have your interview hat on for the whole 2 weeks. That is really key. And we can probably do another video about this, but you know, your training contract is also a 2-year long interview. That's another FYI. But again, I can do another video about that. So back to the vacation scheme, what kind of things do you want to be thinking about holistically? And how can you actually convert your vacation scheme into a training contract once you think about those different areas? Now, let's do the easy ones first, I would say. And I say the easy ones because these are the ones that people typically know are coming. So you know graduate recruitment is going to give you some kind of group task that you're going to have to do with the other vac schemers. You know graduate recruitment are going to give you some kind of written task that you're going to have to do yourself. You may have more than one written task. Different firms do things differently, but there will be some kind of written element that you have to do by yourself, and then it will get assessed by probably associates, to be honest, but it will be assessed by graduate recruitment, and the outcome of that assessment will contribute to whether you get that training contract or not. So taking each of those things in turn, your group task, now I can give very kind of general group task advice here because each group task is different, each firm is different, but there are a couple of things you want to try and remember. You want to make sure that you actually stick to task. So whatever it is that you are asked to do as a group, you want to make sure that you actually answer that. And it sounds very obvious, but you'll be surprised at the number of people who spend a lot of time, because you're going to be in groups, talking, ideating, discussing various different options, and then the clock is run out and you haven't actually come up with an answer, which is what you were supposed to do. So make sure you actually stick to the task. And you could be the person who maybe is in charge of keeping the team back on track. You could also be the person who's really good at keeping time. Again, you're probably going to be given some kind of time limit. So let's make things easy. And let's say you've been given an hour. You get, you know, maybe 5-10 minutes between yourselves to read through all of the different materials that you've been given. You then have to discuss and decide what it is you're going to do. That's probably going to take the bulk of your time. But you then also need to make sure that, like I said in the beginning, you answer the question. So you could be the person who maybe at the beginning, you take a quick 30 seconds to divvy up the time to see how you want to do certain things. At what point in time do you want to touch base again as a team so that you can rehearse what it is that you need to do, or so that you can discuss the different findings that you found and how you're going to present that overall answer at the end. So you can be the time person. You can be the natural born leader. And I say that in inverted commas. I think there are many different ways that you can be a leader, but in this particular group task context, your natural born leader is probably the person who is taking charge. So maybe the person who is delegating or deciding for other people what they will be doing. And maybe also the person who will read out the answer or present at the end, or whatever it is that you might be doing, or something like that. So you can take up that role if that is something that you naturally do. The key thing that I would say there is that even if you're not the person who takes up that role, that doesn't put you at a disadvantage. That is another common question I get. I am not typically the person in a group who is the natural born leader, who takes charge and things like that. I am still here today, as I said at the beginning. So do what works best for you, but that is another role that you could play. Then you've got the person who maybe brings in the slightly quieter people, maybe, or maybe the slightly less confident people. It kind of depends, but you can be that person as well. So you're demonstrating that you're a team player. So essentially what I'm saying with the group task is try and fit into one of those roles, but see where other people are fitting in as well, and see where you can fit best, because you don't necessarily want to be clashing with people. You want to be demonstrating that you know how to work well in a team. You understand the dynamics of a team, and you know how to drive forward the best outcome from a team by playing to your strengths and playing to other people's strengths as well. So that's your group task. Then we've got your individual written task. And with that, like I mentioned before, that's going to be something that graduate recruitment will set you. So perhaps you'll get given it on your first day of your vacation scheme or something like that. And maybe it's going to be due on your final day or your penultimate day or something like that, right? That task, again, and I speak as somebody who has actually marked a number of these tasks before, please, please, please follow the instructions. Again, you'll be surprised at how simple that piece of advice sounds, but I think the best thing I can say for you is that once you've read through whatever instructions you've been given, I would suggest that you then write yourself a checklist of things that you need to physically be able to tick off once you read whatever answer or whatever work product you are going to submit. And before you submit it, if you cannot tick off every single one of those things, you need to go back and redo the task, or you need to add something in, or you need to take something out, or whatever it is you need to do. But it's not done until you can tick off that checklist. That is what I would advise. Because the number of people who, and I'm guessing there are many different reasons for this. Maybe you might leave the task to last minute because you're doing a whole bunch of other things, or you might just not really understand the task that well. There may be different reasons why you get into this position, but the number of people who have clearly kind of rushed a task and then not actually answered the question to the fullest extent, or have not followed the simple instructions there, I would just really encourage you to take some time and make sure that you have some time at the end of that written task to go back and check against your checklist to make sure that everything is done. So that's my advice for the group assessment and for the written task. Those are the obvious ones. Those are the ones that people know are coming, so people tend to prepare for those. That's why I've not gone into too much detail on those ones. Now, what are the other ones that people don't really think about a lot, but are, I would probably say, equally, maybe not more important, but definitely equally as important, right? We've got your interpersonal skills and the interpersonal things that are going to be assessed. And there's a couple of different ways this will be assessed. So during your vacation scheme, you're probably going to have a social that is organized by graduate recruitment, right? Attend that social is the first thing I will say. Unless, if you have a good reason to not attend, fine. But general rule of thumb, do attend that social. That doesn't mean you need to be there all night. So let's say, for example, the social starts at, 6 p.m, end of the working day, and goes on until 11, right? You don't have to stay there until 11, but I still would advise you going at 6 p.m, making the rounds, speaking to people, saying hi, all that sorts of stuff. If there's food involved, eat, all that sorts of stuff. And then you can go after that, right? That's important because you're being assessed there on how you interact with other people. Because remember, ultimately, at the end of the day, you are going to be working with other people. You're not going to be working alone. So it's important to see how you interact just on a normal, friendly level with your peers, with your colleagues, with graduate recruitment. You might find that different members of the firm are invited to these socials as well. So how you network in that sense, that's all going to be assessed. Then you've also got the work or the interpersonal skills that might come from whatever you do with your team, right? So during the 2 weeks, you'll be sat in a particular team. You'll probably be assigned a trainee buddy. You might also be assigned an associate buddy. And maybe there's also a partner supervising or something like that. Again, different firms do things slightly differently, but you're going to have some point of contact with the team that you're sitting with. When you go, what are some easy wins that you can do? You can, on your first day, go around and introduce yourself to everybody on your floor. So everyone in that particular team, you can go and say, hi, my name is Steph. I'm a winter vacation scheme student. I'm going to be here for the next 2 weeks. If there's anything I can help you with, please do not hesitate to let me know. Very short, very simple statement, but it's a statement that's going to put you in good stead because it shows that you have good interpersonal skills. It shows that you know how to speak to people, you know how to be polite, you know how to put yourself out there and put yourself forward. That is great for you. You're then also going to have other kind of, not smaller, but other interpersonal things that relate to your team as well. Like, for example, do you greet maybe the support staff? So maybe are you greeting reception when you come into the building? These are things that, it's not on a form or anything like that, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not in HR, but it's not on a form or anything like that people are watching. But I do distinctly remember giving feedback at one of the vacation schemes I did. I won't tell you which one, but at one of the vacation schemes I did, I do remember getting feedback saying I was a very friendly and personable person. Everyone from reception to partner commented on how I was able to speak to everyone. So people could check they could ask, they could check these things. So do be mindful of that. And if you're naturally someone who's very friendly and polite to everyone, this is probably not advice that you need, right? But if you're not, be mindful of that and think about that. So that's the other kind of interpersonal thing I would think about. And then the final interpersonal, but also / work-based thing that I would think about as well is additional work that you will not be required to do. And when I say you're not required to do it, like I mentioned at the start of the week, you'll have some kind of itinerary with everything that you need to do in that week, right? So it'll have your social things that recruitment have organized for you. It will have any written tasks you need to do. It will have the time of any group task. Maybe you have to do a presentation or something like that. All of that will be included in your itinerary. What will not be included in your itinerary is the fact that you can and you should be asking to help out with additional work for whatever team you are sitting in. Now, there are a couple of things I can say about this, because sometimes when I suggest that, vacation scheme students do this, people then turn around and say, okay, but what about time? My schedule is jam-packed. I'm just not going to have the time to help out with drafting this document or this, that, whatever. A, you're only there for 2 weeks. And B, 9 times out of 10, this is your first or second or whatever piece of legal experience. No one expects you to know how to draft a contract, and no one's going to ask you to draft a contract. Well, depends on the length of the contract, I should say, but no one's going to ask you to do anything that is above your capabilities or that takes too much time, because they know at the stage that you are at. Does that make sense? So when I advise people to, put themselves out there and put their hand up and say they're happy to help out and actually take something on, it's also with the full knowledge that no one is actually going to give you something that you can't actually do, if that makes sense. But all that being said, the reason why I heavily advise you to do that is because, like I mentioned at the beginning, your whole vacation scheme is being holistically assessed. At the end of the scheme, you will either be asked to present a list of everyone you've interacted with or worked with or whatever, or maybe recruitment, depending on how it's structured. But the point is, recruitment will go around and speak to everyone who has interacted with you and ask for feedback on you. And A, the more people you can have giving you good feedback, the better. But also B, the more ways that you can start to build your brand and get your name out there and show that you're a keen person who's enthusiastic, who wants to learn, all that sort of stuff. Again, the better for you. So definitely do put your hand up and ask for work, and do that work to a good standard. And ask for help where you need it, ask for clarification in terms of questions and stuff like that. But do that, even though it's not something that's going to be on your itinerary, right? And again, usually most firms will have some kind of free space time. So they'll have time where you don't have any presentations, you don't have to do any written assessment, you don't have to do any group tasks, all that sorts of stuff. And that free time is where you want to be doing things like that, offering and helping out with the team that you're sitting in. So that's my context, right? And that is a very long context, but I think it's an important summary to give, because when I say that the vacation scheme is a holistic assessment, you need to understand what all of the different elements of the holistic assessment are. So those are the different elements. Now, what did I do wrong in my first vacation scheme, and what did I do right in my second vacation scheme? Now, I think there were a couple of things on reflection, and also just off the back of I did receive feedback, so I kind of also know what I was perceived to have done wrong as well, if that makes sense. In my first vacation scheme, first things first, that it was my first vacation scheme, right? So I don't think I personally went in with enough confidence. I think there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, but I certainly should have gone in with a certain level of confidence, simply just because I did apply, I did interview, and I was successful in making it there. And one key, this is my first tip for you, that I'm going to say is that once you've been through an application cycle and you've been successful in that cycle, you need to remember that the firm does actually want you. They're not setting you up to fail. If they have offered you this vacation scheme, it's because they see something in you. They see potential in you. They do want to offer you that next stage, so the training contract or whatever it is, but they need to do this kind of final assessment to just make sure that everything is a good fit. So I think for me, I kind of went in thinking, oh, I'm a 0, so I need to work really hard to prove that I'm a 10. Whereas I should have gone in with the mentality that actually they think I'm a 7. They want to see if I'm a 10, but they already think I'm a 7. They don't think I'm a 0. So I need to have a little bit more confidence. So I think that's the first mistake I made, but also the first tip I would give you. Be confident in yourself. You have worked hard to be there. You deserve to be there. So act like it, right? That's the first thing I would say. I think the second thing that I did wrong kind of goes to some advice that I've been alluding to already throughout the context and throughout this video. But when you're given a written assessment or you have to do some kind of written work, you really need to make sure that A, you understand it, but B, you answer whatever question you have been given. And actually, I'd maybe also add in a C, but be concise in your answer. Nobody wants to read an academic essay, right? People just want the answer in concise bullet points or in a concise paragraph, depending on what type of written task you've been asked to do. So I'll give you an example. I think I was asked to do an email. It was one of those ones where like you get given a memo and you're asked to write an email off the back of the memo, right? An email addressed to a client, a fictional client, of course. This was a fake task that I was given. And I kind of had the general gist of what the task was about, but there was a key point that I kind of just missed, I guess. And I'm not entirely sure why I missed it. I guess, you know, maybe I just didn't take enough time to go back and double check my work. Maybe I was just tired. I don't know. There must have been a reason why I missed it, but I missed it. And this is why I go back to the advice that I gave earlier, but this would be tip 2. When you have a written assessment or a group task or anything that you need to produce a work product for, you need to produce an answer for, I think it's really, really helpful to, on the actual task sheet that you've been given the question on, or if it's on a laptop, if you have the facility to be able to highlight, go through and highlight all of the different things that you need to produce. So for example, you might find a task will say something like, read through all of this information, produce a summary report with your key findings, as well as 3 strategies for us to implement going forward, right? Something like that. I personally would be highlighting, you want a summary. So the first part of my answer should be a summary of what I've read. You also want key findings. So to me, key findings, I'm thinking bullet points, something really simple. And you're also going to have to provide your judgment. You're going to have to provide those 3 key strategies that you so don't want to have to provide your opinion on, because you feel like you should only ever have to synthesize information and summarize things, right? You do also need to make sure that you follow those instructions and do those 3 key things. So my second tip, as I've already mentioned, would be you creating that checklist for yourself, or highlighting, to be honest, not even and also highlighting what the key things are that you need to do in whatever task you're given, just to make sure you don't miss any. You need to be able to tick these things off. And if you cannot tick it off, the task is not done. It is not done correctly. There's no point thinking about all of the additional, like really clever things you can add in from the knowledge that you already have or additional research you've done, if you can't follow the simple instructions that have been given to you on the sheet of paper that has been presented. So that is the first thing that you really want to try and do. And that's my second tip for you. Now, what other things did I do wrong? I mentioned that I think it's really important to go to socials. I'm not a social bunny. I don't make any secret of the fact that I'm not a social bunny. Well, because some people might turn around and say, actually, I've seen you outside, so you are a social bunny. I can be social, but I very much like my own company. I also very much like to be around people that I feel comfortable with. So people I've known for a long time or that sort of thing. I don't particularly always want to be out with new people. But there are ways and means around it and ways that you can manage that. And I think, especially with my first vacation scheme, I hadn't found the right tools to help me manage that. So I didn't necessarily always present myself in the best way when it came to networking and going to the social events and stuff like that. I don't think I was terrible, but I think I know I'm a lot better with it now. I'll definitely say that. But I think I was able to navigate it a lot better once I figured out how to make myself feel comfortable in some of those situations, and not get too in my head and not feel too shy and all those sorts of things. So I would definitely say, if there's any kind of work that you need to do as it relates to your self-confidence, in some cases imposter syndrome, and if that is the case, you guys do know that I have affirmation cards that you can get, which can help you with self-confidence and imposter syndrome. But it could also be other stuff as well. Like whatever it is, this is a very internal reflection thing. Whatever it is that, if you are this type of person, maybe stops you from wanting to go out and socialize in these kind of ways, you do need to unpack it and have a think about what things can you implement to make it work for you, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you need to make yourself feel uncomfortable or anything like that. I don't advocate for that at all. But I do think you need to just just assess it and see what strategies you can put in place, if any. And sometimes the strategies could be working with graduate recruitment, for example, to put certain things in place to make it more comfortable for you. That's also an option. And I'm not necessarily going to go into that too much in this video, but that is an option too. So just have a think about what it is that you need so that you can make the most of that. So that would be my third tip. The fourth and final thing that I personally think I did wrong, and I'm always... maybe I'll start with the tip and then I'll work backwards and talk about what I did wrong. So as the tip, I think you need to be authentically yourself. And I say this for a couple of reasons. If you're authentically yourself and you're not a good fit for the firm, you do want to question whether you want to force yourself to be there anyway, because why would you want to be somewhere where it's just a clash, right? It's like, you know that image where you're putting like a piece of orange into like an onion or whatever. Like, just because it's the same shape, it doesn't mean it should be there. So if you don't fit, you don't fit. And I think people need to start feeling a bit more comfortable with that fact. Like, it's actually okay to not fit because there's somewhere else out there that is far better for you. You're going to thrive. You're going to feel more comfortable, all that sorts of stuff. So I do think it's important to be authentically yourself. I think in the first vacation scheme I did, I wasn't authentically myself. And I will be open and candid and explain why. There were a couple of things that I got into my head for various different reasons that I will not go into because we would need a whole other hour maybe or more to talk about some of the things. But one of them definitely was my hair and the way I presented myself as a Black woman, just generally. For full context, I am not typically someone, and it's going to sound so ironic because I actually have a blowout at the moment, but typically my hair is not actually straight like this. It's typically in its afro, it's typically in curls, unless I've been back to Ghana, in which case I'll probably have braids. That is typically how I have my hair for the majority of the year. I'm not really someone who wears wigs or weaves or anything like that. I have no issue with them. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. If I'm really being honest, I just don't know how to manage wigs and weaves. And for me, I want to look nice from a vanity perspective. So if I'm not going to look nice with the hairstyle, I just won't do it. So that's honestly really why I don't really do wigs and weaves, because I just don't really know how to do them well myself. And I don't really feel like paying for someone to do it either. So I just don't really do them. But I do distinctly remember that for the first vacation scheme I had, I did go with a wig, FYI. It wasn't a very good wig in my personal opinion, but I think for me, I was very much like, I don't want to go with any other hairstyle that I would probably feel more comfortable with, because I think I need to present myself in this way in order to be accepted. Now, I will caveat that and say that nobody at the firm ever said anything to me that made me feel like, oh, I have to come in with a wig or I have to wear makeup. That's another thing I did, which I don't typically do, not wearing any makeup now. Again, I have nothing against makeup, but it's just not something that I do on a regular day-to-day basis. But I did wear makeup every day of that vacation scheme, and that really tired me out because it meant I had to wake up earlier. And anybody who knows me well knows I love my sleep. So the fact that I had to wake up early to put on makeup did not make me happy. But I digress. I think the fact that I didn't feel comfortable in myself for internal reasons, as I've discussed, then also meant that I couldn't present my best work or put my best foot forward when I was doing certain things, because I was just constantly in my head thinking, are these people going to accept me as a Black woman? Do I look presentable enough? Is my hair straight enough? Do I look like someone who fits in a 9-to-5 corporate world? Like all that sorts of stuff, right? And I think because I got so in my head with it, it basically crippled me from being able to do anything to the best of my ability. I don't think that was great. In contrast, and this is why I say my fourth tip, and probably my final tip, is to be authentically yourself. When I did my second vacation scheme, I went with kinky twists. Now, this wasn't intentional. I didn't like get the vacation scheme and think to myself, oh, let me go with kinky twists. But I just so happened to have kinky twists at the time. And I didn't feel like changing my hair into a wig, to be honest. And I think for me, that turning point was a point where between the time period between when I did the first vacation scheme and the second one, I had taken some time to start working on my self-confidence, to start working on my self-belief, just to start working on myself generally. I didn't do that to be better at vacation schemes or anything like that. It was just a personal thing that I decided to do for myself. But it really helped in the sense that I didn't feel any pressure to present myself or come across as something that I'm not. I didn't feel any pressure to dress a particular way, to speak in a particular way. Again, it's going to sound ironic because I have a very wonderful, if I do say so myself, video voice, but anybody who's met me in real life knows that I sound like I'm from South London because I'm from South London. So, you know, I didn't feel any way to kind of hide that when I was at the firm. I very much wear my hair however I want at work. Fun fact, I change my hair about every 3 weeks because that's when I often do my hair. So this is a new style that they're going to see on Monday, and it's going to be fine. But my point is, I didn't feel a way about it. And I think the fact that I wasn't in my head about that part of myself, because it is such a big part of myself, the way you are and you being authentic, it's your whole life, right? And I think because I didn't feel so in my head about it, it then made it easier for me to do everything else that I've spoken about previously. So it made it easier for me to be able to do my written assessments. It made it easier for me to be able to network and go to social events and believe in my work product and all that sorts of stuff, because I wasn't so in my head about who I was as a person. So that is my fourth and final tip for you. Be authentic, and you really do need to take the time out to figure out what that means for you. It might take a few months, it might take a few years. I still, to be honest, think I'm on that journey, but I'm definitely at a place now where I don't question things that I used to question before. I don't question my hairstyles. I don't question not wearing makeup, because those are my two main things. It might be something else for you, and I would definitely encourage you to take that time to unpack that with whatever resources you may need to. For me, I actually went to therapy for a variety of different reasons, but that helps in therapy as well. So if that's something that you would want to do as well, definitely look into that, because it is very helpful. So I'm going to wrap this video up now. Final thing that I want to say is that I really do wish you the best of luck if you have a vacation scheme. If you are applying for a vacation scheme and you'd still like to know how to convert that into a training contract, I do hope this video helps. If you have any questions or comments based off of anything I've said, please do feel free to comment them down below. And I'll be back again soon with another video. Deuces.